Welcome to Nava Podcast with Leah Cardenas and Stella Pashos.
Let's explore the true essence of Nava.
Nava embodies the concept of beauty in all its forms. It represents the inner radiance that each woman possesses and the unique qualities that make her truly remarkable.
Our mission is to share the stories of inspiring women who are making their mark in the areas of fashion, health, lifestyle, and family. Our aim is to curate meaningful conversations where the journeys and experiences of our guests can inspire you in your own life.
We started this podcast to create a space where everyone can feel beautiful, inspired, and empowered.
Nava is not just a podcast, it's a celebration of the incredible women who have shaped our lives and the countless others who are yet to share their stories.
We can't wait for you to join us. In this episode, we'll explore the fascinating world of personalized products and dive deep into the creative mind of Jade, inspirational founder behind Small Print Design. Join us as we unravel the intricate intersection of design and personalization, where Jade shares the captivating story behind her venture and the artistic inspiration that fuels her boundless passion. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nava Podcast. I'm Leah Cardenas.
And I'm Stella Pashos.
And today we have Jade from Small Print Design.
Hi,
Jade.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for coming on the show. Today, we want to jump in and learn all the amazing things that you're going to share with us about your business. But before we begin, we'd love to let our listeners get to know you really quickly. So we're going to do 60 seconds with Jade and let us know when you're ready.
All right, I'm ready. Nervous, but ready.
Timer?
Yeah.
Okay. Wildest thing you've ever done?
Oh, I'm definitely going down a water slide. I'm not a very wild person.
Coffee order?
Almond latte, really hot.
First job?
Check out Woolworths.
Pet peeve?
Oh, people chewing with their mouth open. I can't stand it.
What are you watching or reading at the moment?
I am watching Britain's Got Talent with my children and they're loving it. Bit random. And I am not really, I'm trying to get into another book, but nothing at the moment.
Favorite color?
Blush pink.
Morning or evening person?
Definitely morning, which is the opposite to my husband, which drives me mad, but definitely morning.
Fun fact?
I am fluent in Auslan Sign Language.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Favorite thing you do to de-stress?
I love watercolor painting, so that would probably be it, or drinking coffee.
That's a wrap.
Oh, all right. So, Jade, can you share us a bit about the story behind the founding of Small Print Design?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started a little business probably, what are we going on, 6 years ago now. And I was really just looking for a creative outlet. So I recognized that there were things in my life that I really love to do. So things like making invitations or, creating something beautiful for someone, a little bit of graphic design. Could I do a flyer? Could I do a poster? I loved that. And I was like, let me make something of this. And so I decided, hey, why don't I turn this into a bit of a side hustle or something that I can, find joy in, but that can also generate a little bit of income. And that's pretty much how Small Print Design started, really.
I love that it came from you wanting to pursue something you enjoy doing, that graphic design, that creative side. And what do you do aside from Small Print Design?
Okay, so aside from Small Print Design, I am a mum of 3 young people who keep me very busy. And I'm also a teacher. So I teach media, photography, and literacy. So it is a busy household here.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
I'd love to know how you came about the name of Small Print Design. So I feel like naming a business might be similar to naming a child, and that sounds really hard. So how did you come about naming your baby?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I would agree with that, but fortunately with my business, I didn't have to argue with anyone over what I was going to call it, which was good. I kind of ummed and ahed over a few different things. I wanted it to encompass everything that I thought the brand would be. So small, meaning that it was never going to be a gigantic enterprise. I didn't imagine having multiple stores. Like that wasn't where I was headed. So I wanted small to be in there because it was just kind of my little niche thing to do. And then print, obviously, I love typography. I love design. I love lettering. And so I wanted to make sure that that was a large component of it. And obviously design. So I wanted that to be a little bit more broad. I didn't want to narrow myself into perfect yet. And it was very unlike me actually to go, hey, let's just do it. Like, let's give it a go. Let's see. Let's launch a couple of products. If they're terrible, no one buys them. So be it. I can kind of that's the beautiful thing about having a little business. You're not stuck in anything. You can try something. If it doesn't work, you can kind of pivot and move on to something else. So
do you mind actually rewinding a little bit and just sharing with us exactly what small print design products you have, and a little bit about how you word your business?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess to incorporate both of those, the business has changed hugely. So when I first began, I was designing and personalizing kind of different types of calico bags, so little library bags or toy bags. I started off with that as an initial concept that developed itself a little bit into busy bags, so beautiful little bags with quite a neutral design with a train track or a road that little ones could put their cars in and take to a cafe, so mum could drink her coffee in peace. That evolved into keep cups. So I've got them here. I'll show you. These are my little mama and mini keep cups, and so they're probably my biggest product at the moment. So
cute.
just something that people could see and enjoy, and that would be a little bit different. I wanted people to see my designs and go, "Oh, where did that come from?" Like, I need to have that. So that's kind of how it evolved. More recently, I have probably branched into the area of merchandising a little bit. So, school productions that want hoodies done, or businesses who want their logos on things. I've kind of dabbled in a little bit of that as well. So, a huge adjustment from 2016. I've often say when I look back at my Instagram, I'm a bit cringy about like, oh, like look at those photos that I was taking. I was really, but it evolved. That was part of our story, and I'm still proud of that. But I'm very pleased with the direction we've headed in more recently.
So going back to 2016 and the Jade then, so where did you start off? Where did you kind of say you've assessed your suppliers, you've ordered the product, then what?
Yeah, so I pretty much thought, hey, let's give this a go using social media. It was kind of the beginnings of businesses really marketing themselves in that space. It had turned from being a little bit of a social app to more, so little businesses started springing up. And so I guess I got my ideas from there a little bit, thinking, hey, I could share this stuff on here, not just with family and friends, but I could extend that a bit further. I could see who I could be seen with. I could do little collaborations. And so my first couple of products, I reached out to a few what we would now call influencers. They wouldn't have considered themselves influencers at the time, but organized, for them to get a few of my products, to take some pictures, and just started posting in a really natural way from there.
Is the influencer kind of marketing still an element that you use now?
It's probably not as much now. I think that entire industry has really changed a lot. There's a lot of regulations, a lot of restrictions, and a lot of it's excellent actually, because it requires transparency in on that behalf, that people are no longer kind of promoting products that they receive for free. They actually need to declare that. But I think I've done a huge amount of that, and now I have enough of a brand that I can roll with what I've got. I'm really happy with my photos. I'm happy with the products. I've upskilled myself as well in a way. So if I know the style of the picture that I'm looking for, I'm probably able to do that a bit more independently. But in the early days of my business, I relied on that hugely. I needed those other sets of eyes. I needed mums road testing my products. I needed to see how kids responded. Did they love them? Was it too basic? Were they too small? That sort of thing.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think going through your feed, I've noticed that the customers have enjoyed being creative themselves and kind of branding and marketing your product for you. So that's an excellent benefit for you and for them.
Absolutely. So I love that they're played with, but then I also love that they kind of feature on a little shelf in a nursery too. I think that's a really sweet part.
Do you have any advice for those who want to approach an influencer or somebody to help promote or take photography of their products?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably what I would say is don't be afraid to ask. The worst that can happen is someone can say, sorry, not interested. And you can decide to either let that affect you and go, that's it. I'm never gonna ask anyone again. Or you just go, all right, well, that's just part of it. Maybe that's not a door that's opening for my business. But I would say definitely do it. And I think be real about what you're expecting of people that you want to support your business as well, because it doesn't, I'm a photographer myself, and it's a lot of effort taking photos, staging them, getting the lighting right, editing them. So don't necessarily expect that people will work for free or just for an exchange of product. I think we need to place a bit more value on, that aspect of design and of content creators. But yeah, definitely don't be afraid to reach out and just give it a go, because you just never know where that can take you. You don't know what their networks are, who they'll connect with, or who your product can end up being seen by.
On that note of rejection, have you ever faced that, and how did you navigate that?
Absolutely. I really have. I am in the beginning or the early stages of designing my cups. I was like, oh yeah, I could put these in coffee shops. I could, there's all sorts of things that I could do. And I approached a few cafes and was turned down, not necessarily that they didn't like the product, but it was, oh, we already have something quite similar. So obviously not wanting to stock multiple of the same. And that did hit me hard a little bit, because I was like, oh, why don't they love this like as much as I do? But when I kind of um, pulled back and looked at the situation from an outsider's perspective, I was like, our goals are different here. Just because they sell coffee and I sell coffee cups doesn't make that a match made in heaven. Just because just because someone sells clothing and a store has that available doesn't mean that that's a fit. And so when I pulled that back and I thought, hey, you know what, who I want to see this are mums and bubs, and I kind of adjusted my strategy a little bit. And when, that rejection is okay, because it's actually leading me down a better path. It's helping me to refine my audience a bit more.
Mm. It's amazing that you were able to reframe rejection in a way that's, realigning you to the path that you're meant to be on, and it's going to have a better outcome, as opposed to being, down in the slumps with that outcome, because I can see how people would fall into that for sure. Going back to, again, 2016, I'm loving the throwback. I understand you started off in markets as well. So social media was a huge influence on the success of your business, but humble beginnings, and you started off at markets. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I did. So I also came to recognize that social media can only take you so far. So, with the battles we have with algorithms and all sorts of things, there's only a certain number of people that you can be seen by at one time. And so I thought, you know what, I'd love to actually get people to see my products in person, because I think it's an experience. And that was one of my goals. I wanted, when people see my product, I want them to envision it in, a part of their home or in an experience they're having. And so I thought, you know what, let me just go to a local market. I set up a relatively shonky stall, but it looked good from the outside. At that time, again, it was very niche. There was nothing like what I was doing at market. So it harbored a lot of attention. I had heaps of people taking business cards. I made quite a few sales. And I noticed then that socials would slowly grow kind of as a result of those natural connections, or people saying, hey, I saw this, and it gets in another person's hands. So we started there. I recognized also, with a young family, markets is not a hugely practical option for me. So I kind of did them here and there. I branched out a little bit into some bigger exhibitions. So I did One Fine Baby at the Royal Exhibition Centre. Incredible exposure for exactly the kind of target market that I'm after. That was great to kind of see my product in a whole other light. I mean, I was really a rookie amongst, an array of beautiful businesses, but it was really nice to go, actually, I can make something of this. And there's a way that, I can present myself so that I can be up there with those other incredible brands.
For our Melbourne-based listeners, are there any markets that stood out as having a similar impact to the exhibition that you also attended?
Yeah, there's so many more around now. I think little craft markets. I started down at one in Beaconsfield, just the Akuna Park market, just as a local. That was local to me. There's lots of other avenues too. I think markets are taking on a different direction now. There's incredible kind of makers collectives popping up all over the place. I've got my cups stocked up in Monbulk at Monbulk Emporium. So that's kind of a store that's set up for different small businesses to rent just a small cube of space and have their items on display. There's an amazing one called Your Local that's just popped up at the district in Docklands. Same thing, just an incredible chance for smaller businesses to go, hey, I can't be here to sell this product all the time, but it's collectively staffed by different business owners, and just a chance to pop in and have your stuff seen by people that wouldn't normally see it. So that's probably, I guess, the direction that markets are heading in now. Yeah.
Such great ideas.
Yeah. And do you feel like those markets helped you create networking connections with other businesses that might be similar to your own?
Yeah, absolutely. And you start to see how other people do things, how they advertise, how they create their signs. And you really kind of, gain a lot of ideas from that. But you also see that there are other people who are in the same boat, who are working towards the same goals, who have these incredible creative outlets in these different little areas, and that no one needs to be exactly like someone else. I think that's what I love, that you see these people doing things. Someone might do earrings, but they're doing earrings so beautifully well. They're not trying to diversify themselves so much that, they've got 25 different products. They've just recognized, hey, this is my little niche and I'm going to do that, incredibly well.
You want to champion on other businesses and not necessarily see them as competition. I think that's really important for women.
I've been to imposter syndrome. So I have read a lot about it online recently. So my perspective on the question has changed, but it's something like 90% of females feel imposter syndrome. And the article that I actually read recently was kind of like, stop talking about imposter syndrome. Are we normalizing it and making it an okay theme for women to fall into the comfort of feeling that, as opposed to, persevering and really seeing the worth in your qualities and qualifications? Did it creep in for you, and how do you feel about imposter syndrome?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that. I think you're right. I think it's something that we can very easily hide behind. And I think imposter syndrome, absolutely real. And I felt it right from the get go. I still do to this day. I still have moments where I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm so out of my depth here. What do I really know? Other people are doing this better. Other people can use these programs better. But I think if we kind of recognize imposter syndrome for what it is and say, you know what, it is an intimidating world out there, but that doesn't mean I can't do this. And I think if we recognize, especially as women, and start championing each other and go, hey, you know what? You're kicking goals in this area. Sometimes it feels like you don't know what you're doing, but it really looks like you know what you're doing. And that's the main thing, isn't it? So yeah, I would agree. I think it was there from the beginning. It still creeps in today. And I'm able now to recognize it and say, you're right, I'm feeling insignificant here. I feel like I don't know anything. But I'm going to give it a go anyway.
We'll be back
After a short break. This conversation is sponsored by 39 Degrees.
39 Degrees have created a hot spring experience that you don't need to book, plan, or leave the house for, because they know you've already got a full mental load.
When everyone has gone to sleep and the house is quiet, you can draw yourself a bath, step in mineral milky waters, and absorb in the goodness of natural minerals the way cultures have been doing for centuries.
Michelle and Susie created their signature 39 Degrees bath tonic to replicate that moment as soon as you step into a hot spring.
It's all natural derived, vegan friendly, and suitable for all skin types and every single body.
Nava listeners receive a special 15% off with promo code NAVA15. That's NAVA 15.
Now let's get back to our conversation. Do you kind of look back on how successful your business has become, and are you kind of like, Jade, what was wrong with you back then? Like, you had this, you got this. Look at what you created. Like, looking at your Instagram, you've got 10,000 followers or more than that actually, which is incredible. So yeah, do you have those feelings now where you're like, I wish I could tell myself back then there was nothing to worry about?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yes and no. I think all beautiful things come from a really, humble sort of beginning. And I think if I hadn't have made some of the choices that I did in the early days, if I hadn't have created some of those products that really went nowhere, I wouldn't have found myself in the position I am now. But yes, I do agree. And I wish I kind of had got there sooner. I think to myself, like, imagine if you just started with those cups instead of, all the, the little things that I tried and had a go at. One thing in particular I started with was I thought to myself, I'll make these book bundles. So I had this beautiful library bag, and I was going to put like bundles of children's books in them. And I was like, people would love this. I would buy this. And then I sold like next to none. And in reflecting, I was like, well, people can get books anywhere. That wasn't my niche. That wasn't what people were looking for from me. It was the actual design itself. It was the beautiful library bag that the little one could sling over their shoulder and traipse on into the library with every week. And so, yeah, just reflecting and going, some of those choices in the beginning actually led me to some of the products that I have now. So I think it was still worth it in the end.
That's a really nice way to look back and reflect.
Yeah, and it can be so hard when you're in the moment creating something that's part of you to remove yourself from it and look back to actually, what does my audience want and what is my brand about? Yeah.
Jumping into family, we'd love to ask you a couple of questions around that.
Yeah. How do you balance your artistic side of the business with family and balancing all the challenges?
Yeah, look, I don't know that I do balance them particularly well, but I think everything ebbs and flows. There's seasons for everything, and I think for me, it's just about emphasizing what's the priority at this particular time. I mean, there are seasons with my business where I haven't posted on social media for months, and I that essentially it can be quite damaging sometimes with the way that we're trying to keep ourselves seen, keep ourselves in people's feeds. I decided probably quite early on that I wasn't going to allow myself to become absorbed in that rigorous, I must post 4 times a week. I need to make sure that I'm commenting and doing all of that because for me, like I said earlier, it's a side hustle. It's my kind of creative outlet. It's what I love to do, but I also love my family. I also love my job. So I think that there had to be a really fine balance there between sometimes my focus is going to be small print design, but for a very large proportion of the time, it's going to be my family and what brings me joy there. So, yeah, I guess I don't balance them evenly. That's probably the best way to answer that question. And I don't think you ever could. I don't think you could ever divide yourself evenly between a business and everything else going on in your world. So just recognizing that sometimes there'll be seasons where you spend a lot of time in that space and other times it'll just tick along in the background. And both of those seasons are equally amazing.
Have there been any challenges in the beginning of kind of getting into the rhythm of that balance that you faced?
Yeah, I think, look, I don't love admin. And I think that there are seasons or there are parts of the business that are very admin heavy. There are times when you would need to respond to lots of customer inquiries. There's times where I'd need to generate invoices. None of those things are the beautiful design creative outlet that I was hunting for. So I think probably they would be some of the biggest challenges for me. Again, balancing life as a mum and a business owner, it's not so easy to sit down and get an hour of quiet time to do some invoicing. And so I found probably that was the biggest challenge. How do I juggle this between making dinner, breaking up a fight, making sure people are fed and toys are picked up and all of those things. So that's probably been one of the biggest challenges so far.
I think that feeds really well into my next question in what are some of those practical tips you could give our listeners for balancing it or just trying to figure out how to do it all?
Yeah, I think making sure, I guess the biggest tip is don't let days and days pass without giving it some consideration. So I think it's important for something to stay alive, to stay flourishing. You need to invest in it. And I know for me, I always make sure that some part of my week I devote to my business. So for some weeks that might be 15 minutes. That might be scrolling through and engaging and responding to a few things. It might be updating a few photos. And other weeks I get a couple of hours to invest in that. But I always make sure that it's there. It's not forgotten. It doesn't fall off the radar. I'm making those connections. Yeah, I think that would probably be that advice. Make time for it because what you make time for, will flourish.
What are some of your hobbies that you love to do? Obviously, you have your creative outlet, which is small print design, but are there other things that you enjoy doing that help create that balance as well?
Yeah, I think so. I love coffee. I love drinking and making coffee of all kinds. I like going to different cafes, and I like, noticing the vibe of a place. I'm a real people watcher too. Probably harder to do now with children. I have to watch my own small people, but I would love kind of just sitting and observing. Like I said before, I love to paint. I like to dabble with watercolor. I'm not very good at it, but no one else sees it, so it doesn't really matter. And then I love photography as well. So capturing moments is one of my favorite things to do.
We have a little bit of a glimpse into an area of your house that we can see there. Tell us a little bit about your design style, and do you feel that that feeds into your look and feel of your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my goal with small print design, I wanted to create beautiful things. I love beautiful things. And so I thought there must be other people out there that love beautiful things as much as I do. And I think in the early days of my business, my focus was on that kind of that monochromatic theme was quite in the blacks and whites, which I loved. And there was a time for that, but that's kind of evolved into more of a neutral, sort of clean, minimalist kind of design. And so that's where the business has gone. And that's probably very similar to what you'd see in my house. Neutral tones, beautiful lettering that kind of pairs together, not overcomplicated things. And so I think that definitely flows through into my designs in the business and is definitely evident in my Instagram feed as well, where I, showcase a lot of that.
Small print design has its own distinct style and approach. And so, what do you think, from your view, sets your work apart from others?
I think that anyone can design anything, but I think if you have an eye for what goes well together, you can create really beautiful pieces. And I like to pride myself on that. I like knowing when there's too much going on in something and pulling it back. I think that's probably what sets us apart, not overcomplicating things. Often when people design things or when they sit back and they create something, it's always a bit like, oh, I have to fill that space. I have to put something else there. For me, it's like actually pull back and look at, the bare minimum. Where can we find the beauty in that instead? So that's probably, yeah, to answer that question.
I really love that. It almost feels like a life lesson.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I probably need to apply that to my life a little bit more. But.
All right, moving to practical, which I'm sure our listeners are really excited about. Those are that want to start up their own business. Walk us through the creative and production process of small print design.
Yeah, so I guess it starts with just playing around. For me, I open a new design, I dabble around, I play with things, I change fonts, I change sizes. Something I'm always very conscious of doing is never deleting. I always duplicate. That's a button I use really often in my designs. Duplicate, change a bit, duplicate, change a bit, because I like to see the pathway of where I've come. I'd like to see where did my thinking start, and where has it got me to now. So just a lot of that, playing around with things, the sizing, the shape, the lettering, everything, and just going, what do I feel like looks good here? Sometimes I get, a lot of my friends will know, I'll text them things, which one do you like, A or B? What looks better? And I don't always agree with them. And I think that's good as well. It's good for me to go, hey, these are other people's opinions, but it doesn't necessarily, need to directly influence. I can take that on board, and tweak things. But at the end of the day, I know what, I feel like will suit small print. So, yeah, that's probably the practical way. From there, I would look into manufacturing or design. So, what do I want to see this on? Am I printing it on a bag? Do I want it on something else? Is it going on a garment? And just dabbling with ideas and mock-ups from there before actually getting to the finished piece.
The founder of Small Print Design Company, what have been some of the key challenges you've faced along the way, and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, I think probably one of the main challenges would be just staying relevant, making sure that I'm not being left behind. So, staying up to date with trends, making sure that I'm looking on socials myself, I'm following, those kind of mums and little ones. I'm kind of staying in that space. Another huge one would be sourcing. That's really difficult. When you start a business, you need to find suppliers, you need to find manufacturers, you need to work out how am I going to package this stuff? And a lot of people I guess, are quite unwilling to share that. They keep those quite, quite securely guarded because a lot of time and effort and, heart has gone into that. And so I guess it's trial and error really to work out how much is this going to cost, trying to get samples made. That's a tricky sort of process. Again, looking at cost as a small business, we don't necessarily have mountains in the bank to throw at it. So just making decisions where you go, yeah, I feel like this is worth investing in and giving it a go.
Hmm. What advice would you also have, especially when it comes to patents and copyrights? Is that something that's come up in your field?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say cross-check everything. So I think you really can't just go and see something on Google that you think is a good idea and run with it. There is so much involved in terms of licensing, especially for fonts when you're working with lettering. So go and research that information. So if you're printing or you're using a particular font on a product, there's licenses that you need to buy for that. And within those licenses are lots of small details like how many end products you can create. So with the particular design and font that I use on my cups, there's restrictions on how many thousand of those I can produce before it requires a different license. So definitely do your research. Read into things, and cross check everything. Am I following the guidelines? Am I meeting copyright requirements? And am I not trying to just reproduce someone else's design just with a slight little tweak in there?
I love that you've shared with us that you have always stayed true to your vision of your business, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think that's probably the key takeaway from that is just staying true to your own vision.
Absolutely, and just not be afraid to be who you are, or to embrace your own style. It's very easy to kind of mimic or to copycat what you like in someone else, and that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing to seek inspiration and to really enjoy what you see, but then thinking to yourself, right, what's my niche? How can I make this my own, without making it look like I'm trying to be someone else? Or yeah.
And for our listeners, where is a good place to go to find that information in regards to copyright?
Yeah, it's tricky. It depends on where you're sourcing your things from. So there are lots of creative design websites out there that are a Creative Fabrica. There's all sorts of ones where you could source logos, where you could source fonts, and all of them have really clear details there of what you can and can't share. I would suggest purchasing your own fonts if that's what you're going to use, obviously, and just from the get go saying this is going to be my style, and then you're able to use that. Then you'll see that flow through into my socials as well. I use the same sort of fonts that I do in my designs in a lot of my social media posts.
Could you share a memorable project or client story that sits close to your heart that really exemplifies the impact your print designs have had on their brand or business?
Yeah, absolutely. The internet is a beautiful place, and it has the ability to be really destructive. But one thing that I have really loved, especially from social media, are some of the friendships and the bonds that I've formed with people who I've never met in person. I We did a collaboration with a friend called Claire. She is in based in Hobart, and we got to talking. It evolved from there, but we created a t-shirt with the print "Just Be Kind" on it. And so, as part of that collaboration, we decided that $5 from every t-shirt purchase would go directly to an organization called Bully Zero. So they work to educate young people about how to be kind to each other, essentially, how to avoid bullying in the online space, in the school environment, and that was something that was really passionate um, to both of us. So we created these teas, we marketed them, we sold, so many. It was incredible. And we ended up donating all in all close to $5,000 to Bully Zero. And so for me as a small business, like that was incredible. That was an amazing way to go, hey, you know what? I can't do a lot from here. We weren't even in the same state, but just with a very small concept, we were able to run with that. I even ended up having a teacher, also based in Tasmania, have her whole entire class wear them for an end of year performance to just share that message even further, which I thought was really cool.
That's so special. I love when small businesses can help the community also. It really shows how powerful community is. Can you discuss any other collaborations or partnerships that you've had that's helped grow your brand?
Yeah, so I guess just lots of little things. As I navigated through my business, I realized that the things that I create and participate in didn't necessarily need to only be things that ended up in my storefront. And so I've actually had quite a few collaborations with businesses where I have supported them with their own packaging for products. I worked with Eve from Baby Noise Toys. She makes beautiful wooden toys for little ones. And so I was able to help her with some packaging for little maraca eggs. I worked with another company, Dough My Dear Play Doh. And so we did some beautiful calico bags to package their glass jars of Play Doh. They're the kind of the collaborations that I've loved throughout the process. So situations where it's not necessarily about me or about my business, but saying, hey, how can I support you? Because it's difficult to find suppliers that will do small runs of things. There's minimum order quantities. There's a lot to consider. So it was great that I found a way there to kind of support and champion other small businesses and say, what can I do to help you make this look amazing? How can I print your logo on, some aprons that you can wear for your cookie business, like that sort of thing.
And were you reaching out to these businesses, or was it a natural kind of them finding you, or a bit of both?
A little bit of both. I think, again, customers weren't afraid to just say, hey, do you think you could do this? And we were quite open to that on my socials. I was like, if you've got, something, I mean, come and ask me. Let's see if we can do it. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. Sometimes I have the equipment to do things in house. Other times I'll say, hey, I can't do that, but, why don't you check out this person or that person? So, yeah, very naturally kind of someone seeing a need. Okay, I need these bags. Do you think that you could produce some of those? And for some of them, I was just kind of the starting point too. So I might not have been the manufacturer that they ended up going with long term, but if I could help them create a mock up or develop a style that they really liked and then they could outsource that, I was really happy working in that space as well.
Can you share any upcoming projects or exciting developments we can look forward to from small print design?
Yeah, there's not a huge amount on my radar at the moment. I think teaching and mumming has kind of taken up a huge amount of my time, but I've definitely just been focusing on how can I narrow down the products that we have into things that I really feel represent us and that are selling really well. So our cups are not going anywhere. In fact, we've heard from lots of people we would like some auntie ones and nana ones and grandpa, all sorts of things. So I think for me that will be my next little venture to kind of add to that collection a bit more.
That's great, honing in and looking at your craft and how you can expand upon what you already have.
Yeah, yeah. So that's where we're headed.
A segment that we love to do with every guest is a little bit about our core values. So Nava, we've created an acronym. So Nava stands for Navigate, Aspire, Value and Achieve. And so we're going to ask you a couple of questions to fill each acronym, with the intention being that our guests can take away that little formula and apply it in some way in their own lives to really empower and inspire them wherever they are at in their own journey. Leah, do you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah. All right. Navigate. How do you set clear goals as a business owner?
I think starting off with the idea that nothing is off limits. There's no goal that is silly. There's no bad ideas. And so for me, I like to write things down. I like to think, what's realistic for me? What can I achieve this week? And also not thinking of 400 goals at once. So being able to narrow that right down and go, okay, for me, this is what I'm going to work on. I'm going to refine this cup design. I'm going to create another t-shirt design. So keeping it really quite simple and not too ambitious, but also not telling myself, oh, that'll never happen. I can't set that as a goal. Just the sky's the limit, and just one thing at a time is my motto for myself.
That feeds in perfectly to A for Aspire. So what advice do you have for individuals who are dreaming big, who the sky is the limit, and are out to set out their own ambitious goals for themselves?
Yeah, I would say give it a go. There's really nothing stopping you. The worst thing that can happen is it doesn't work. And if that's the case, so be it. Move on whatever you were working with and try something else. So yeah, that would be my advice, to give it a shot. You never know what can happen.
That's great and ties really well into value. You are such a positive person throughout this conversation. How do you cultivate such a positive mindset?
Yeah, look, I don't always have a positive mindset, but I'm glad that that's how that came across here. But I think, like I said a little bit earlier, realizing that some weeks family comes first. Sometimes that's the priority, and that's okay. And so I think maintaining that concept that this is not something I have to do; it's something I get to do. I love it because this is my way to be creative. And if it's no longer bringing me joy, then I need to kind of ask myself some questions about that. What am I doing it for? So that's probably how I maintain that positivity, realizing, what, I get to do this. This is really cool. I get to design things that, some people will love, that they'll have in their homes. And that means a lot to me.
The last letter for Nava is A for achieve. So, based on your own experiences, what practical steps or strategies can you share with us? I know you've already shared a lot in terms of your advice, but what would you share with our listeners in terms of them being able to really just go for it and do it and achieve those goals?
Yeah, I would say just reach out to people, ask. So, find people around you who have done it. If you can't find people around you, jump into Facebook business groups. There's incredible groups where women are supporting women. There's, so many people out there who can help you, who can answer those questions that you feel are silly. And yeah, reach out. Don't be afraid to go, hey, how do I start this? How do I create a website? How do I, get the URL to be my business name? There are so many people out there who are happy to support you and to work in that space. So that's what I would say. Just, ask the strange questions and just see what you'll get.
That's a beautiful message. And I think for me personally, I can only do things sometimes when I'm expanded by someone else's success in that same area. So it might be, a friend sharing that they asked for a pay rise, or yourself today speaking about starting a new business and just going for it. So unless someone's expanded someone in that way, it's sometimes really difficult to know how to go about it. So thank you for sharing all of those incredible tips with us.
Awesome. So good to be here.
Thanks, Jade.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.